The impact that an absentee father has is commonly used in media, entertainment, and the arts. So you'll see the concept of not having a father in films such as Star Wars, The Quiet Girl, Interstellar, uh, uh, stories like Hamlet. It's a subject that is like searching for sand in the desert. This concept of a person growing up without their father. The father wound is what we call the emotional damage that occurs when a father is physically absent or emotionally absent, um, and or physically, emotionally abusive to a child. The father wound can deeply influence the individual's psychological development and contribute to complex post-traumatic stress disorder. Just because a person does not have their father when they're growing up present doesn't mean they will have CPTSD. And just because we have CPTSD doesn't mean it's because our father wasn't present. In fact, um, a common misbelief is that having a father wound is more common than having a mother wound. That is incorrect. Just as many people have CPTSD caused by the emotional neglect of the mother as have CPTSD caused by emotional neglect from their father. In some cases, it was both. It was a combination of both. And we'll examine how your father wound may affect you in your life. Again, a father wound refers to the emotional, psychological scars when you had an absentee father, either physically, emotionally, or an abusive father. Um, so some people develop low self-esteem as a result. They may develop difficulty with authority. They may develop relationship issues down the line or emotional regulation issues. Um, CPTSD is PTSD when it has been prolonged trauma. So PTSD is post-traumatic stress disorder resulting in symptoms because of a traumatic event. When we have complex trauma, CPTSD, that means that there is ongoing trauma, such as the absence of a father physically or the absence of a father emotionally. So the father wound can be a source of CPTSD. Um, we could find ourselves having internalized trauma in the sense that our emotional and psychological impact makes our beliefs and our feelings maladaptive as a result of what we've gone through, which means that we tend to think in a detrimental way, such as to believe that you are unworthy, or to live in fear, or to have a fear of abandonment, or to be motivated by fear and listening, allowing your emotions to guide you. These internalized patterns are part of the symptoms of CPTSD. In many cases, we can develop attachment issues. So if you had a father who wasn't around, or he would say that he was going to come, but then he didn't come, or he was supposed to be there, but then you felt abandoned, that could lead to attachment issues so that now you have difficulty forming secure attachments in your romantic life or even in your friendships. You could become avoidant as a result and have difficulty trusting others, um, not wanting to feel vulnerable. For many, not having a father around or having a neglectful father means that they're now dealing with self-identity issues. If you have chronic invalidation or criticism from a father, that can undermine your sense of self and contribute to your identity issues. So some fathers are abusive in a sense where they'll try to make a joke of what they're saying, but their words are so hurtful. So they'll say little things about your weight or your looks and tear down the child, which is a form of emotional and mental abuse. And then if you call them out on it, they say, "Oh, don't be soft. I was just kidding." Doing that can lead to a sense of worthlessness and identity issues. So, what we want to look at is how we can heal from our father wound. If you had a father that was narcissistic, then he may have been physically abusive or emotionally abusive, could have just been threatening. Sometimes fathers don't necessarily hit often, but they have a frightening physical presence. So you have to think, even in the law, it's considered assault if a person just threatens you physically. Um, well, many fathers just are very physically threatening, right? So it's not that they necessarily inflicted physical damage, but there's psychological damage from the constant threat that they could potentially inflict physical damage, if that makes sense to you. And so that damage is real. The psychological damage is real. Again, if your damage comes from the words that they spoke, or maybe it was just that they weren't there. This is commonly made fun of in social media where people will post online some sort of joke like, would you like to see what my father looks like? And then in the next frame, they'll show an empty room. And like there, this is what it was like growing up with my father. In other words, he was never there. And even though they are attempting to make humor about the situation, in the actual reality, for many, it can be a cause of stress and trauma. So if we want to heal the father wound, it's not important for us to dive deep into every single thing our father did or said. It's enough for us to recognize that we have been wounded by the fact that our father was not there for us, was absent, was abusive, crossed our lines, crossed our boundaries, didn't respect us as a human, um, or openly abused our mother in front of us. These can all cause father wounds. It's enough to acknowledge that we're impacted. We're impacted by the way the father treated us. Um, like Blanca, I talked about in my book, she said that when she went to Disney World, her father punished her by making her walk 6 feet behind the rest of the family. So you can imagine this little girl walking behind the rest of the family by 6 feet as if she's some sort of second class citizen. This can have a deep emotional impact on a child, and it can cause a split. So when a person goes through emotional trauma in childhood, they can split in order to find a way to survive an environment where they feel like love is difficult to come upon. They can become either narcissistic or they can become um, the empath, right? And so here on this chart, you probably can't see it there, the lighting. But what we're illustrating here is a split that occurs from childhood trauma where a person can go this direction, which illustrates dropping the empathy and becoming a narcissist, or a person can split and go this direction, which shows dropping the ego and becoming the empath. And the empath could lead to be having CPTSD, the loss of self, the people pleasing, the worrying about everyone else, prioritizing other people's feelings and well being over their own, or going the narcissist route, which is doing the exact opposite. It's the loss of concern and object relations toward other people, the loss of empathy toward other people, doing everything for self preservation. The chart that I just showed you is in the book, but also it's described in detail on the website, mindfreed.org. So whichever direction you found yourself splitting, whether it's to be more narcissistic and self-centered or to be more selfless to the point where you have difficulty loving yourself, you have to come in now and change the beliefs, the bias, and the behaviors as a result of your father wound. The beliefs, the bias, and the behaviors. And an example of a maladaptive belief that a person may develop from their father wound is I can trust no one. I can trust no one. This is a maladaptive belief. Why is this maladaptive? It's because it will cause us problems in the future having relationships. So it doesn't adapt to adult life to be successful in adult life in our future. So it's a maladaptive belief. I can trust no one. And a bias is a way of thinking, such as negativity bias, scarcity mindset. So our bias that's sort of associated or aligned with believing that we can trust no one is believing that anything someone says to us must be some type of manipulation. So anytime someone approaches us or talks to us, someone shows romantic interest in us, we have a tendency to look at that and say, yeah, but what's the catch? There's probably a catch to this. And that would be our bias to believe that everyone's always scamming or conning us. That is also a maladaptive bias. If you walk through life assuming that everything is a lie, then again, you will miss out on the opportunity to form meaningful connections with people, to form alliances with others, and benefit from what relationships could bring us. Your behaviors, that third B, the behaviors are anything we do that is then maladaptive as a result of our childhood. So, an example of a maladaptive behavior that could coincide with not having trust and believing that everyone's scamming us could be to never talk to new people, could be to be avoidant, could be when we start getting close to someone, we find a way to sabotage the relationship. That would be a maladaptive behavior, sabotaging relationships. So, if we want to heal from our father wound, we're just using these as examples, but you have to find your belief, bias, and behaviors that are maladaptive. If we want to heal from that, we need to make a decision to change. So, how do we change our beliefs? And this is very important. The key is you're making a decision to change. So you're analyzing the situation and you're deciding, it's going to be to my advantage, to my benefit to make a change here. And then so you decide to make the change. It's not a feeling. It's not waiting to be swayed or won over to a new belief. It's making a decision. Believing that I can trust no one doesn't work. So what is a more adaptive belief for moving forward in life as an adult? Does anyone know? I know we have some clinicians in the room as well. What would be a more adaptive belief for moving forward in life rather than I can trust no one? A more adaptive belief rather than I can trust no one. So, regarding being able to trust others, what would be an adaptive belief? Very good. So, Sue says there are some people I can trust. Um, I can trust myself to know who's safe. I can learn discernment. Very good. Very good. These are more adaptive beliefs. So let's go with those. Um, I can trust some people sometimes, and I can trust myself to make the best decision I can to know when and where it's safe to move forward. Right. So understanding just these two more adaptive beliefs can help us. Now we replace the old belief, I can trust no one, with the new belief, I can trust some people, and I will decide the difference. I trust myself to decide upon the difference. In order to switch the beliefs, we just need to compound evidence. In order to switch beliefs, we just need to compound evidence. So you're deciding that you're going to choose the more adaptive belief, not because it feels better, but because it will be better for your future, meaning it's more beneficial. So we're choosing what is more beneficial for us. Now, to help ourselves along in that, we compound the evidence, meaning we'll write a list of, let's say, 5 things. That's 5 supporting pieces of evidence that we can trust some people sometimes and that we can trust ourselves to discern. So, what are some pieces of evidence? What you'll notice when you do this is what you've been doing your whole life is the opposite. You've been compounding evidence of why you can't trust anyone. So every time something goes wrong in the media, and someone was a criminal or a scam artist, you say, see, that's one piece of evidence of why I can't trust anyone. And as soon as someone lets you down in your relationships, you say, there you go. That's why I can't trust anyone. And you're compounding evidence to support a maladaptive belief, which is unfortunately detrimental to your life. Now you must do the opposite. So we have to compound the evidence to support the adaptive belief. So, what are some examples? So, you start thinking of times that someone has behaved in a trustworthy manner. Well, there was that one nurse in the ER. Actually, all the nurses that helped me that day behaved in a trustworthy manner. So that supports that I can trust some people sometimes. In fact, I have to. Otherwise, how could I receive medical care attention? How could I buy groceries? How can I drive anywhere? I have to trust to a degree some people sometimes. How could I let anyone live in my house? And so, in all the days and all the years and all the people that I've met, how many have actually betrayed and wronged me? And you'll realize that the minority of the time, people are betraying and wronging you. And the majority of the time, you're having normal interactions with people. It doesn't mean that it's rare for one of the people in your life to betray you. That's actually very common. In fact, it's a nearly an inevitability that everyone in your life may betray you in some small way. It's nearly an inevitability that everyone in your life could betray you in some small way. It would actually be less common, not impossible, but less common to meet a person that never betrays you in any way. Okay. So we just have to have an adaptive way of looking at that. Okay. So people will betray me. That will happen. But the majority of the time you're with most people, they're not actively in the action of conspiring against you or betraying you. Again, the majority of the time you're with most people, you're not actually having a bad experience. This is a piece of evidence. And so I stack that on my list and I write that down. Most of the time with most people, I'm not actually being hurt, harmed, abused. Okay, now I'm putting in evidence to help me to support the belief that some people are trustworthy sometimes. Wow, this is a much more adaptive belief, and it's becoming easier to believe as I continue to stack evidence. And so you keep thinking of examples of times that people were trustworthy, times that you benefited from trusting someone, times that someone surprised you and came through for you in a way you didn't expect. That one friend that showed up when you asked everyone to help you move, you asked six people, one person came. What we tend to do as trauma survivors when we have negativity biases, we focus on the five people that didn't come. Wow, five people didn't come. Five people didn't come to help me. I can't believe it. I asked six people and five people didn't come. We get so fixated on that, you're missing the diamond in the rough. Someone showed up, someone came. They're showing you that you did have one friend. And instead of being grateful for the one friend, we become upset that the other people didn't come. This is just negativity bias. You realize that you're experiencing the same type of life that everyone else is, but in your mind, your life is way worse because you have negativity bias. There's an example on the internet, on social media, a mother posted for her child's birthday party. I want to say her child was like 5 or 6. Okay. For her child's birthday party, she had invited 10 kids and only about 5 could show up. Okay. She invited 10 kids, only five were coming. So she decided she was going to cancel her daughter's birthday party. And she bragged about it online. She was like, I had to cancel. I mean, it's just ridiculous. I invited 10 kids to this birthday party. And now imagine only 5 show up. How heartbreaking for my daughter. Hmm. Let's think about this for a minute. Is that necessarily guaranteed to be a big heartbreak for the daughter that she's going to have 5 kids at her party? I think the actual number, now that I'm telling this story, I think the actual number was 14 and 7. So she invited 14 people and only 7 could show up. So this kid was about to have 7 kids at her birthday party. In reality, most kids would look at the 7 kids at the birthday party and be like, this looks like a party to me, right? And they will jam out. They could just have 1 or 2. The real heartbreak is your mom canceling your party because your mom is too vain and too narcissistic and too negative minded to appreciate that some of the kids are actually coming. This is the fallacy of negative thinking. You think that your life is so much worse than everyone else's. But I'm here to tell you, as an expert in social dynamics, 50% is normal when you give invitations for a party. That's normal. You realize that, don't you? 50% is a normal turnout. That's not odd. You see what happens when when you have a negative mindset is you oh my God, how am I? It's so embarrassing. I'm only going to have 7 kids there. That's normal. Typically, if you have a get together, you have a party, you invite 14 people, only 7 will come. That's very normal. And if you're in negativity mindset, you don't know that. If you're in positivity mindset, then you'll be able to appreciate it. So mindset is our perspective, and that's the second B, which is bias. It's the way of looking at things. Do we look at everything as if it's bad for us, as if it's going terrible, as if it's negative? Or do we look at things as if it's good, if it's just positive with gratitude? There's detrimental bias, there's a beneficial bias. So when it comes to trust, having the bias that anything someone says to us must be some sort of scam, they must just want something from us, creates a reality that's very bleak for you. But if you have a more healthy bias, instead of everyone scamming me, then you can have a more healthy reality. So, uh, what would be an example of a more healthy bias when it comes to trusting others, as opposed to the unhealthy bias? Everything someone says to me is a scam. Anytime someone approaches me, they just want something from me. What would be a more healthy bias? I'll let you guys come up with that. What would be a more healthy bias? What do you have? This is a hard one, but you can do it. You can take a stab at it. Some people genuinely care about me. Uh, I will trust until evidence supports not trusting. Every time someone sees me, they feel safe around me. Very good. Um, People can trust me. Very good. I don't have to give into any situation I don't want to. Very good. I trust that I will be discerning and set appropriate boundaries. Very good. I don't know if it's a scam, but I will wait and find out. Very good. Excellent. So these are better biases. Instead of deciding that every time someone speaks to you that they want something from you or it's some sort of scam, you can change your bias to, I don't know what people's motives are, but I trust that I will figure it out within due time and set the appropriate boundaries as necessary. All right. Now we have a more adaptive bias to accompany our more adaptive belief. Now we're walking into the world with some people are trustworthy some of the time. And I don't know what people's motives are, but once I find out, then I will make the appropriate adjustments and set necessary boundaries. Wow. Wow. So it sounds like this new way of thinking isn't totally safe. It sounds like we could open ourselves up to get hurt. That would be correct. We are opening ourselves up for the possibility, for the potential, for the inevitability that someone could lie, that someone could betray. And look at how we're moving forward instead of giving in to the fear. We're moving forward anyway. Because relationships are a numbers game. When you don't get the numbers, you won't be able to get the good relationships. Since we don't know by just looking at a person if they're going to be good or bad for us, then we need to move forward despite not knowing until we find out if they're going to be good for us or bad for us. If they're bad, then we cut them out then. But we need to find out by observing the way that they interact with others, the way that they interact with us. And our main telltale sign that someone is a toxic person is how they respond to us, specifically when we're boundaried and assertive. But sometimes they start treating us bad from the get-go, and that's your sign to cut them out. Again, it's how they respond to you. It's how they treat you, especially when you're boundaried and assertive. When they start hearing no, then that's our indication that we need to cut them off. Being well boundaried means that you're able to walk away. You're able to walk away if the person is bad. So now we're not allowing ourselves to be defined by what happened in our childhood and how our father treated us. We're now moving forward with an adaptive mindset. Some people are like my dad was, not good. Some people are different. Because if I'm good, then that means good exists in the universe. And that means other people could potentially be good as well, which means I could potentially meet them. But I'm going to have to go through many candidates, which means I'm going to run into some more dads, the ones who are like my dad, right? But that's okay. But that's okay because once I recognize what they are, I'll just boot them out of my life. Does that make sense? How do we boot people out of our life? Stop talking to them. Stop listening to them. Stop paying attention to them. Give them no energy. Cut them off from our resources. Don't allow them to have any access to our resources. Our time, our energy, our talent, our personal space, our voice, they get no access. That's how we cut someone off. That's all. And it's not to be mean or harsh. It's not to punish them. It's to keep ourselves comfortable. Safety, yeah, but comfort. We're going to move the goalpost from just being safe and surviving to just being comfortable and thriving. Finally, the last of the three B's is your behavior. A maladaptive behavior associated with distrust is being avoidant, living in fear, doing everything according to fear. So a more adaptive behavior, way to act, is to not be avoidant of others, but to have a healthy level of interdependence. This is where you're independent for what you need to be independent for, but you're able to rely on others for things. You're able to talk to others. You're able to ask for help. You're able to interact and take the disappointments that may come. And instead of avoiding relationships, you purposely fill your life with an abundance of relationships. Of course, most of these won't work out anyway, so it's only going to end up with a couple of really good ones. But if you attempt to start 100 relationships, then you're going to end up with maybe 5 decent friends. And unlike that one mom who didn't like the idea of just 5 friends, 5 friends is plenty. It's more than most people. We don't need more than that. But when I say you have 5 friends, I don't mean like the fake, trying to please them type of friends. I mean 5 authentic friends. 5 authentic friends where you can be yourself around them and they love you like that. Again, where do we find these 5 friends? Not in avoidance, not in I can't trust, not in I don't go around people. It's through the new behavior of feeling our life, being abundant, introducing ourselves to hundreds of people. Make it your goal in the next 6 months, 4 months to meet 100 new people. No agenda. No agenda. Both genders. Just, hey, my name's Roman. Good to meet you. Just saw you sitting over here. Just wanted to say hi. Just introduce yourself. Hey, I've been coming here for a while. Hey, I wanted to know what you thought of the chicken soup. Hey, whatever. These people are out there. They're in our groups, they're in our clubs, they're in our restaurants, they're in our congregation. Meet people, shake their hands, look in their eyes. Dare I say, smile a little bit and be genuine, be honest. Tell people exactly how you are, how you feel. And some of them will become connections, most will not. Most of the relationships you start out of 100 relationships, about a solid half or more of them will end in rejection, either of you or you rejecting them, because there's just something you don't like about them, or they just don't really like you, or they just don't vibe with you, or they don't need friends. And when you go through that, you actually build secure connection instead of a maladaptive, fearful attachment and all this stuff. You build secure attachment when you go through your worst fear of losing people. You have to plow through it and you realize, oh, I'm fine. Like it seemed like it was going to be really bad, but after doing it several times and meeting these people and most of them fall out of my life, it's fine. It's fine. The majority of people are not going to be that perfect one for me. So it's okay. Okay, so this is your license, this is your opportunity to move forward, start those relationships. That's a healthy behavior. So now we're moving into the world not defined by our past, by our father wound, but we're moving from an executive mindset. Do you see how all of this was thought out in the cerebral cortex? Just intelligence, it's wisdom. This is non-emotional. And so we're making a decision non-emotionally to understand that we can trust some, but not maybe not all, right? To understand that not everyone's scamming us and we'll figure it out as we go, which means that we're going to expose ourselves to some risk and then taking the action to expose yourself to the potential that people will reject you and you'll have to reject some too. And as a result, you will live a life that is full. You will be cured of your personality disorder or your mental illness, and you will have beliefs, biases, and behaviors that are adaptive, no longer living in the father wound.